touchdown.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us. Call or text. The number is the same. It's 855-752-4842. You can leave a comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Friday, January 24th. Today, the average price of a gallon of 2% milk in Wisconsin, $3.11. The average price for a dozen of eggs in Wisconsin, $5.09. Hey, if you would like to keep up to date on what is going on around the state of Wisconsin, and in particular in your community, sign up for the Civic Media newsletter. Our mission is to bring you real news and great conversation. You get it all by subscribing to the Civic Media newsletter today. Just go to civicmedia.us/email and sign up. You can also sign up to get podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
You can subscribe to our podcasts.
We have 2 podcasts.
And where would people find them?
Go to civicmedia.us and then click on the shows tab, which is in the top right position, and you can find our show, Matenaer On Air. And inside the Matenaer On Air show, where you can download the episodes, you can also find This Shouldn't Be a Thing episodes as well. Or go to your favorite podcast distribution center of choice, look up our name, which is a bit,
it's a little tricky. It's Matenaer.
There you go. And
Just
then
like
you can find our shows there.
And if you leave a comment or...
If you leave us a 5-star review, that actually helps the show. You will push us up in ratings. You will push us up in findability. So... if we've deserved a 5-star review, please do so. If we haven't deserved anything but a 5-star review, send all of those to Calvin's personal home address. That is 123 Happy Street. I believe that is in Waterloo, Wisconsin.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go.
We have one of our videos actually that's done quite well. At least it's gotten a lot of views.
Yeah.
Calling it doing well might not be exactly accurate.
In the land of social media.
Yeah.
One would say it's doing quite well is our video where we talked about guns and we referenced a Jon Stewart interview with a sitting state legislator
from Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm. It's currently sitting at 884,000 views.
Wow.
With 35.5 thousand likes and nearly 8,500 comments. And all the comments, Jane, are respectful.
I'm sure they are.
And kind. What's funny is that you constantly said to me, you think they're making fun of us and calling us names and telling us what we can do with ourselves.
Yes.
They're really just arguing with each other.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because I will say this, I'm glad you brought this up. There is one slight inaccuracy in that video, and that's on me, is that I said that Australia, when there was a mass shooting there back in the 90s, they banned the guns. They didn't ban guns. You can still get guns in Australia. It's not easy to get them there, but what they did was they banned the guns that were part of that incident.
Mass shooting.
Which were, I believe, automatic weapons and it was weapons that I don't think we need to be having anyways.
Weapons of war, weapons
that belong on a soldier, not on a guy, who lives out in the suburbs. But that's a wholly different argument. But yeah, it's doing great. And I want to know, are we the first to hit 1 million? Will we be the first at 1 million? I don't know. I don't know.
You can check it out. Where can people find that video?
You can find us on social media. So that's the Instagram page. You can find, so Instagram, we're still on Twitter. We're on Facebook, and we're on, and those are the 3 majors. You can find Matenaer On Air, all one word, and then you can find us all on Civic Media's YouTube page.
That's one of the easier places to go, I think.
Yeah.
Look for us on the Civic Media page on YouTube, and like or leave a comment.
And you can follow us on our own personal stuff too, because we're on the Blue Skies and whatnot.
That'd be nice. Wanted to start off We have Dan Shafer coming up. He's going to be joining us in the 11 o'clock hour so we can do some recombobulating. But I wanted to start off with, and this will be a continuing series as we head towards the election on April 1st.
Yeah.
The primary is February 18th.
Correct.
The election is April 1st for the Wisconsin Supreme Court. Yes, getting to know Brad. Let's get to know Brad Schimmel, the Republican who is running against Susan Crawford for the next spot on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. From WPR, Anya Van Wagdendonk with an article today says dueling Wisconsin Supreme Court adds focus on rape kit backlog. You're going to be hearing a lot about this.
Yes.
As we head towards this election, which, by the way, is going to be here before we know it. And my request to you would be, if you learned something from listening to us, share that.
Yes.
Share that with the people that you know. Share it with your friends and people in your circle, because we all get our news from different sources. It helps. It helps if you share what you know.
I know it's a lot to ask because people are very busy, but we do show notes at the end of the show. Everything we were telling you before about how to find the show on the website, you can do that, and you can find our show notes. You'll find the articles we're referring to, and you can share those articles with your friends and family and get more information from them, because we're giving you quick overviews of these stories, and a lot of them go deeper. They're much longer.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we always want to make sure that you're getting the full information of what we're referencing.
So these rape kits, this is going to be coming up a lot. You're going to be hearing a lot about this. When Brad Schimmel was Attorney General, the backlog of rape kits was about 6,000 when he took office as Wisconsin's Attorney General in 2015. Brad Schimmel served until 2019. In a recent campaign ad for him, Mr. Schimmel says his office cleared 4,000 of those rape kits during his time in office. On the other side, Susan Crawford released a different ad focusing on his early years as Attorney General, and her ad says he let 6,000 rape kits sit untested for 2 years. So here's breaking this down just a little bit. As of early 2017, when Schimmel was Attorney General, his office said the state had cleared 9 of those 6,000 backlogged tests. 9 out of 6,000. This was after the U.S. Department of Justice sent $4 million in grant funds to Wisconsin to help clearing these rape kits. A spokesperson for Brad Schimmel at the time said the Department of Justice was following proper protocols for respecting survivors.
What?
And adhering to the requirements of the grant money. About a year and a half later, much of that backlog had been cleared. Schimmel announced in 2018 that all but 5 of the backlogged rape kits had been cleared, using about $7 million in total grant funding. This ahead of his reelection campaign when he ran against Josh Call, who had criticized the way Schimmel handled these backlogged rape kits and ultimately defeated him. Schimmel said in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, we didn't delay anything. We didn't set anything aside. This was done as quickly as possible. Yeah, it seems like he kind of sat on these for months and months and months. And then Josh Call started running ads about this. And then it seemed like there was a little bit of a scramble.
Yeah.
To get these kits cleared.
It wasn't so much. So they were respecting survivors.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just reading the quotes.
It just seems like a very convenient excuse to me, because I've never heard that used by anybody. I've never been in this situation, but I would think that someone who has endured such a traumatic event would want the evidence to be processed as soon as possible.
Yes.
To move forward on possible case or cases.
Schimmel and Crawford again. Brad Schimmel, Susan Crawford running to replace outgoing liberal Justice Ann Walsh Bradley. This will determine whether the Wisconsin Supreme Court keeps its 4-3 liberal majority or it flips back to a conservative majority. And I want to remind folks again, if we elect Brad Schimmel, we're going to go back to super gerrymandered maps. That we will. Okay. We're going to go back to super gerrymandered maps. And we're going to go back to that 1849 abortion ban.
And there'll be a bunch of other things they'll repeal or because it's just going to be now about going back and undoing all the work that's been done just in the past year and a half. So,
And going back is a good way to put it because they want us to go backwards. Definitely.
yeah,
Only, I don't know, a couple 100 years.
they're asking for.
1849.
They're asking.
Things were so good back then.
It's not even 200 years, Jane. Come on.
Oh,
Get
sorry.
on board.
Am I
Get on
being-
board.
I'm
You're being emotional about
I'm
it.
being well, I am a lady.
You are.
You know, that's one of my flaws. The other thing to keep in mind, and this just broke yesterday, kind of in the middle of the show, Elon Musk, now all
Yeah.
hot about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race. This should make people go, what?
Uh,
Elon Musk, the world's richest man, has now waded into Wisconsin's Supreme Court race. Musk posted Tuesday on what used to be Twitter, quote, very important to vote Republican for the Wisconsin Supreme Court to prevent voting fraud, unquote. There is
Sure.
no massive voting fraud, my friends. It has been in court over and over and over again. And I don't care what Mike Johnson says about how they know intuitively that there is massive voter fraud going on. There's no evidence about that. And if Republicans are to welcome Elon stepping into this, then I don't want to hear any more complaints about Zuckerbucks, although that's all gone.
no.
But remember the outcry about that
Yeah.
when Mark Zuckerberg was leaning a little bit more Democratic?
Those were the days.
Those were the days. And it was Zuckerbucks, he's influencing it. We can't have that. But this is fine.
Well, and now the new Zuckerberg is just fine with them. And I will say
Oh,
this.
yeah.
If you want any idea of where Elon's politics are truly going, look at who he's backing over in Europe. He's backing far right candidates. I'll just say this: Elon, stay out of Wisconsin. You don't belong here. You have no business being in this state. You don't care about voter fraud because none of this affects you. You
At
are
all.
a billionaire hundreds of times over. Keep your nose out of this state because we don't want you. You are useless here.
I just want to hear the same amount of outrage from Republicans if Elon starts dumping a whole bunch of money into this race to buy this seat for Brad Schimmel. I'm sure Robin Voss and Devin LeMahieu
And Brian Schimming.
And all those, they will just be screeching about,
Yeah.
this is not America. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air. We are on the vast, statewide, countrywide. We're global on the app, baby. Oh, yeah. On the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll be right back.
She gets mad and she starts to cry. She takes a swing, man. She can't help. She don't mean no harm. She just don't know what else to do about it. Jane said.
Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Sweet Calby on the board. Coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. After the 10 o'clock news, we're going to talk about ignorance is bliss. Really? And then all the best people, round two, of course, second Trump administration, some of his nominees for his cabinet going to be coming up for a vote later tonight. That is Pete Hegseth. We're going to have a little chat about Mr. Hegseth. Dan Shafer will be here after 11 o'clock from the Recombobulation area. He's also Civic Media's political editor. Number of things we're going to talk about with Dan, including Wisconsin connections to the Trump administration, Tammy Baldwin's vote on the Lake and Riley Act, Tom Tiffany. Remember Tom?
Barely.
Tom Tiffany, big fan of the Apostle Islands.
Big fan of drilling and mining and development.
That's part of it. And Ron Johnson on tech stuff. And, of course, we're still going to talk about the fallout from that CBS 58 meteorologist who lost her job after criticizing Elon Musk for making a Nazi salute. That's all coming up with Dan Shafer next hour. We will wrap everything up as we always do with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it's the That Bites edition. So stick around for that. We did have a question on the live stream came in about, I have a new blog. Earth-shattering.
Okay. My
It's
goodness.
about soup. It's about the soup saga.
Yeah.
You can find it. Go to civicmedia.us, click on shows, click on Matenaer On Air, and you will find it there.
And if you want to know what it's referring to, you can always go back to civicmedia.us, click the shows page, and listen to the episodes where we covered
I have links.
the soup saga.
I have links in my blog about that.
There are soup links in the soup story. Jane Matenaer, the soup. So it's like Soup Wars, and you're like Jane Skywalker, Jane Soup Walker.
Yeah, really.
I can see it up in lights right now.
Societal changing blogs. So that's what you're coming.
We're gonna write
for.
a treatment after this and sell it to Hollywood.
Excellent. Right now, though, I wanted to do a little short segment about why can't we have nice things in Wisconsin? What is it? Headline reads from Cleo Critchie in the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel: $50 million to change how kids learn in Wisconsin could end up in state surplus.
Of course.
Without any action. Lawmakers have already agreed that we want schools to change the way they teach kids to read. This was approved last year.
Yeah.
And it is a mandated program.
Bipartisan support.
Which means schools have to implement this.
Which means schools implemented it.
They did implement this. The only thing they're lacking is the money to pay for the program because the Joint Finance Committee continues to sit on the $50 million that's been approved. I'll say it again. The money has been approved, but the Joint Finance Committee in Wisconsin won't release it. If this money isn't spent by the end of June, guess what, Greg?
What, Jane?
It goes back into the state surplus.
Where $4.5 billion languishes.
Right now.
Just sits there doing nothing.
Yep.
Until Robin Voss can figure out a way to
give it to Diane Hendricks.
Maybe the Elines as well. I mean,
this measure requires Wisconsin schools to shift to a phonics-based approach, which is how I learned how to read.
Yeah, me too.
Back in the dark ages. And I don't think that's a bad thing. The only thing, again, is that schools are mandated to implement this, and the Republicans in the legislature won't release the money. In February of last year, Governor Evers vetoed certain portions of Act 100 under which this money comes. GOP lawmakers sued in response, arguing that the governor's vetoes were unconstitutional. The governor countersued. A judge ruled in his favor, but didn't authorize release of that $50 million. The legislature appealed that decision to the Wisconsin Court of Appeals, and that's where it is sitting.
Just trying to teach kids how to read, folks.
The $50 million would allow the state's Department of Public Instruction to create a new literacy office, a council on early curricula, a statewide literacy coaching program, and they could hire some reading specialists. which all sounds important if we want to help our kids learn how to read, which is kind of important.
I feel like it's got good ramifications in the long run. Kids reading, that's fine. That's great.
State Superintendent of Public Instruction Jill Underly, along with a Republican lawmaker, Joel Kitchens, Republican from Sturgeon Bay, they both agree that that money should get released.
So what are we doing? Like, seriously.
Jill Underly says, our kids deserve better. I want to stand firmly with no malice on behalf of Wisconsin's children and educators, state legislators, release the money. This is why we can't have nice things.
And notice how she's had to say no malice, because you're making a bold claim like release the money to support the reading program, and you have to worry about blowback, pushback, and other things like that, like lawsuits. This is why we can't have nice things.
Release the money that you approved and mandated for these programs, guys.
Which is just, by the way, folks, and I know we talk about it a lot, but if you're a new listener, this is just one of many things that have been approved by the State House where money is sitting there and it needs to be released, and it's not.
PFAS money for people who have in Wisconsin who have been drinking bottled water for years because their water is poisoned. That money's still sitting in there.
Funding for hospitals.
Yeah, that money's still sitting in there too.
Yep, it's just sitting there.
And keep this in the back of your mind. Keep things like this in the back of your mind when you go to cast your vote for Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
That plays a part in this as well.
Yes.
Cleansing breath.
I need a cleansing walk outside in the 0-degree weather just to let the cold hit me and make me feel feelings again.
We have news coming up next when we return. Ignorance is bliss. We'll kick that around. Stay close. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Dr. Slide on the board, coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Hey, hockey fans, tonight, Wisconsin against Michigan. Our broadcast starts tonight at 6:30. You can listen on WFHR and 1320 AM, 97.5 FM in Wisconsin Rapids. You want to listen to that hockey action tonight. Wisconsin at Michigan. Our broadcast starts at 6:30 tonight on WFHR in Wisconsin Rapids. Coming up after 11 o'clock, Dan Shafer will be here from the Recombobulation area. We're going to wrap up the show, as we always do, with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it's the That Bites edition. And if you ever have a thing you think should not be, send it into Greg and me at Jane Says, JANESAYS. Jane Says at civicmedia.us. You can use that same email. If there's a guest you think would be good for us to have on, if there's something going on in your community that you think needs some highlights, just let us know. Jane Says at civicmedia.us. Right before we went to the news, we were talking about why can't we have nice things in Wisconsin? Because Republicans just don't want to move on anything. And a good reminder, too, this is from Scott Bauer, who works for the Associated Press. Let's just remember this. Republicans who control the state Senate still, in his second term, have not confirmed 11 of Governor Evers' 17 cabinet secretaries. One of these people is in her 5th year of working for the administration and still has not had her position confirmed.
This is just like the junk they pull in Washington when Mitch McConnell ran the play. I mean, it's not going to stop either, but like this whole thing of, yeah, we don't have to do it. What do you mean we don't have to do it? Like there's a dead Supreme Court justice. Well, we won't fill it. We don't have to. It's fine. But meanwhile, once again, if, let's say, the Democrats ran the Senate, state Senate, and
did the same thing,
Governor Tim Michaels, I'll pull a name out, Tim Michaels was in the same position, they would be unloading holy terror on every right-wing radio station, newspaper, every outlet would be like, how dare they do this?
Going against the will of the people.
Going against the will of the people. In a representative democracy, talking to you, Robin Voss, this is the voice of the people that's been silenced. They'd be wetting their pampers over this.
There's no question.
But they do this all the time. And in the last segment, the Joint Finance Committee, controlled by, wait for it, Republicans, are holding back money for who? The people.
Money that's been approved.
Our money, tax money. It's just so infuriating. And sometimes I want to shake Democrats and be like, do something.
Make some noise about this.
Yes.
Make some noise about it. All right, we're going to move on to, ignorance is bliss. Is it? Headline reads from the Washington Post, Trump officials pause health agencies' communications. These agencies are charged with making decisions that affect the lives of every American, including here in Wisconsin, and are the source of crucial information to healthcare providers. So think about this. The Trump administration, beginning of this week, told federal health agencies to stop all external communications. So that means health advisories, weekly scientific reports, updates to websites, all stopped. The more we know, the less we know, the better off we are, apparently.
That old NBC thing, the stars just crashing into the ground, the less you know.
Staffers at the Department of Health and Human Services, including the FDA, the Centers for Disease Control, and the National Institute of Health, just a day after the administration took office, we're told they're doing some reviews. And so for right now, we're not going to communicate anything. This includes scientific reports from the CDC, including the annual mortality weekly report. These advisories get sent out to doctors' clinics on the CDC Health Alert Network about public health incidents. You know, there's this little thing called bird flu that's kind of floating around.
Yeah, it's a hoax.
Oh, is it a hoax?
Yeah, people find, do you got a bird? You don't got a bird, you don't have to worry about it. The birds won't touch you. Like, it's, I'm just so frustrated by this.
They've stopped data updates to the CDC website. Public health data releases from the National Center for Health Statistics. That organization tracks a whole bunch of health trends, including drug overdoses. The CDC was supposed to publish several reports this week, including 3 about the avian flu outbreak. And now we're not going to get those while the Trump administration is doing its review.
Oh, now they're taking their time. They didn't take their time reviewing all of the sentences for all the J6 guys. They just like, hey, you're free.
Oh, we don't have time for that.
But this is going to deserve a fine-tooth comb.
Right. They didn't have time. It was too onerous to go over the January 6th attackers case by case, Greg. Too onerous, too much. 1,500 whole cases, Greg. They don't have time for that. So he just gave them all a blanket pardon. It's not clear from the new administration's guidance on whether this directive will affect more urgent communications like, I don't know, foodborne disease outbreaks, drug approvals, and new avian bird flu cases. Don't tell them.
I'm just going to say this. If COVID was any indication, and that's when there were guardrails on him, when he had experts next to him, telling him, hey, stop telling people to eat light and rub their bodies in bleach. There are no guardrails anymore. If there is anything coming close to a pandemic happening, when will we find out? And the problem is it'll be outside sources telling us, and then no one will be believed because they are part of the left-wing agenda to brainwash us and turn us into mindless zombies of the left. There's going to be...
The ramifications from this are massive. Massive.
There's already so many dead people from COVID on his hands because of the way they handled this thing. We got 4 years. Things happen in time. A bird flu happening. This happens once or twice a year. What's the justification, and why will there never be any responsibility taken by them?
Well, don't forget Project 2025, which, of course, if your friends hadn't heard about it, it's not important. It's not going to happen. No. If I haven't heard about it, then it doesn't mean anything. That's some of the responses we heard when we were talking about Project 2025. In Project 2025, they call for any scientific findings that do not align with the opinion of the administration should be removed.
Yeah. Yep.
So anything that counters the prevailing message out of the White House, even though that messaging might be accurate, they're going to remove it.
And the CDC generally, they're one of their big goals is accuracy. So we won't be probably seeing anything coming from them anytime soon. They'll just, I don't know, maybe they get reassigned to another case. Maybe they just get new jobs. I mean, that's the thing is I know somebody who works in the government and they're looking for a new job right now, not because they think they're going to be fired, because they know that their life's just going to get boring because they can't do the work they want to do.
Well, they want to stop Bob Kennedy has already talked about stopping all cancer research for at least 2 years. 855-752-4842. Jack from Merrimack on the line. Good morning, sir. What do you want to chime in about this?
Yeah, you already beat me to it on part of it. The Project 2025 stuff. I mean, basically, one of the premises, I don't have the exact quote, but it said that all scientific findings and regulatory findings and so on and so forth must be in alignment with quote-unquote conservative principles.
Yeah.
And as a scientist, this is one of the most frightening things I've ever heard because, of course, anything that, as you said, anything that doesn't align with what the administration wants you to know, well, let's, we'll just squash it and we'll look for findings that support our position, no matter what, how inaccurate the source might be, no matter how questionable those findings might be. I mean, this is one of the most dangerous things that I see, and in terms of physical dangers to the entire U.S.
This is dangerous.
Crazy.
This is dangerous for all of us, Jack.
And this is dangerous for the world.
It is absolutely.
I was going to say, I'm not a very smart man, apparently. And Jack, I'm glad you brought up the whole must align with conservative values. And when I think conservative values, one of the first things I think, top of the list, maybe, pro-life. Now, take that notion, that value. Wouldn't we want our CDC to be the shining beacon on the hill of research and development so we could inform, protect, and keep life? That just seems very in line with a pro-life standard. Not so much this keep everything in the darkness, squash research, don't tell the people about what's going on, because, you know, that's when people, I don't know, die.
Jack, it's kind of like the old saying about growing mushrooms. You just keep them in the dark and you feed them crap.
Yeah, that's very, very familiar. There are two major other issues besides the CDC stuff. One of which is, of course, global warming, and the other is environmental degradation. And conservative principles basically say, yeah, let's just let the environment, let's let corporations and big business do whatever they want to, including whatever they want to with the environment.
Yep. Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate your calling and always for listening. Laura from Wisconsin Rapids on the text line. I'm worried about our food. Pork recalls, beef recalls, bird flu in chickens and eggs, by the way. Veggies and fruits are going to be affected by the manure fertilizer as well. I am very worried.
But yet they're all going crazy because they banned red dye number 3. And they think, oh boy, here comes Robert F. Kennedy getting rid of all these other seed oils. You're next.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if Robert Kennedy gets confirmed. Tammy Baldwin did meet with him. And we can talk about this with Dan Shafer a little bit after 11 o'clock, and said that after meeting with Robert Kennedy Jr., she's even more concerned about him getting confirmed to head our health agencies. The guy who has no medical experience, no medical background. He's a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer.
I mean, then there's Juris Doctor in the title, but not doctor of anything worth anything here. But yeah, but he's the guy who's going to say, why? Because he does push-ups and he has abs. Oh my God. I know people who do push-ups and have abs. I would never let them near my health.
When we return,
If we return, I might just run away.
we're going to talk all the best people. Round 2 in the Trump administration, Pete Hegseth to lead our Department of Defense. The vote is expected to come up for him tonight. 2 Republicans coming out formally against him. I'll tell you why that's not going to make any difference, and he will get confirmed. That's all on the way. Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
We're not the same. We're not the same. Oh, we're not the same. Yeah, we used to stick together. We wrote our names in blood. I guess you can't accept that change is good. It's good. It's good. Why you treat me just like another stranger? Well, it's nice to meet you, so I guess I'll I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way. I've seen all good people turn their heads.
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, the board lord, coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and the platform that Jabba the Musk continues to actively ruin. After the 11 o'clock news, Dan Shafer, author of the Recombobulation Area and also Civic Media's political editor, will be joining us. We'll be talking about a number of things happening in Wisconsin. We're also going to touch on the manliest of manly men, Jesse Waters.
Oh, he's saying things again.
Yes, Jesse Waters from Fox has thoughts on more manly man thoughts.
He
guys,
should release a book.
of the manly thoughts from a manly man.
A manly book about manly thoughts.
Oh,
for manly men.
For manly men, there's so much potential there. That's coming up after 8 o'clock. Yeah, guys, you shouldn't be doing this.
Yep.
Because if you do this, according to testicle bronzing Jesse Waters, you're not a manly man. So
Sorry.
we're just trying to help you.
Yeah, I mean,
Just trying to help. All the best people, round two. Donald Trump, of course, said in his first administration he was going to surround himself with all the best people, not counting the fastest turnaround of staffers, I think, in the history of the presidency.
he had 44 cabinet members.
Yeah. Whoosh. Oh, that one's gone. Whoop,
Yep.
we lost another one. Now, among the best people this time around, Pete Hegseth, of course. The 44-year-old former Fox Weekend host, which totally qualifies him, wants to head up the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
Pete allegedly has had a few drinking problems in the past.
He has a drinking problem.
He
Yeah.
has had some, let's say lots of sexual infidelity problems. Now he's found Jesus, so that's all in the past. That's like the get out of jail free card for everything.
Ask Russell Brand.
Yeah, we could do a whole show about that. Pete Hegseth has admitted he had a disclosure agreement with a woman who accused him of raping her. He paid her $50,000 and also has a non-disparagement clause for his ex-wife. She cannot publicly speak ill of him. That's in their divorce agreement. Her sister
Doesn't.
and has had some very interesting things to say about what life was like for her sister when married to Pete Hegseth.
Yeah.
She had a safe word. That she would use with friends and family when she needed to get away from him because she was afraid of him. But that's all. He's so qualified, Greg.
I mean, Jane, I don't even know if I believe it. I feel like
you're right along with Senator Tom Tillis.
Oh, he gets it. He gets the real world.
Senator Tom Tillis, Republican from North Carolina, says he will support Pete Hegseth to run our military unless, quote, there is firsthand corroborated testimony on his alleged spousal abuse and sex crimes. So if there was no one to witness him attacking his wife or sexually assaulting someone, it's not valid. There's no proof.
That's the same junk I heard people say when Bill Cosby was being accused of sexually assaulting and raping
Repeated.
like 4 dozen women. Was you weren't there? Oh, so I have to have
Witness.
I have to have a firsthand witness to, and even though women said that it had happened, that's not good enough.
Well, no.
So the sister who can't speak because of, by the way, folks, if you have to put a non-disparaging clause into your divorce agreement, you're probably a piece of trash.
Well, it raises some questions.
Yeah. Like, how terrible is Pete Hegseth? I mean, that's just a general broad question. But if the sister, if her testimony, just isn't good enough.
Right. No. And again, Senator Tillis will only accept firsthand corroboration. So people have to witness the rape, the sexual assault. Otherwise, it didn't happen. So I guess in the only instance that Senator Tom Tillis would be happy with is the French man who invited men to rape his unconscious wife for about a decade. So that would be a witness involved. And you know what? In that case, they were found guilty.
Yeah.
So I guess there's
I just
justice.
have a feeling that Senator Tillis still wouldn't buy it. When you put up such roadblocks, such a slalom to get through, it's like you were going to vote for him anyways. Pete Hegseth could say, I did that. And you'd probably like, you learned your lesson.
Oh, he had a reason.
You love Jesus.
Well, she wanted it.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and Lisa Murkowski,
Yeah.
and Susan Collins
Oh, God,
can go. They can bite me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but they've said they're not going to vote for him. The deciding vote is going to go to J.D. Vance. Pete Hegseth will get confirmed.
Which one of those two do you think is actually going to vote for him, though? Because they've said this before. They have backed
Well, they
down.
both voted for Brett Kavanaugh. They both approved Brett Kavanaugh.
They have been nothing but disappointments to democracy, probably for like a solid 15, 20 years now, where they talk a good game, and in the end they bend and break. And I wouldn't be surprised if one, if not both of them, vote for Pete Hegseth and give some sort of excuse of like, well, we really talked about it, and we felt he was the best guy for the job.
Joni Ernst is going to vote for him, and she is a sexual assault survivor. Yeah. News is coming up next. And then when we return, Dan Shafer will be here from the Recombobulation area. Stay with us. You are listening to Matenaer On Air. This is the Civic Media Radio Network.
I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way. I've seen all good people turn their heads each day, so satisfied I'm on my way. I've seen all good people turn their heads each day,
morning. Welcome to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, Calvin Butenoff coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. You can always join us, call or text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. That's 855-75-CIVIC. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream, Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. And you can also call and text directly from the Civic Media app. Go to wherever you get your apps. If you haven't downloaded it yet, it is completely free. Look for Civic, C-I-V-I-C, Civic Media. Download the app. And again, you can call and text directly to whatever show you're listening to all across the state. 20 stations across the state of Wisconsin.
Noise.
Dan Shafer is here. He joins us every Friday from the Recombobulation area, also Civic Media's political editor. After the 11:30 news, you posted on Twitter about something. The manliest of manly men, Jesse Waters from Fox, has opinions. And we're going to dive into that a little bit. I think it's, manly men rules, Dan, are very important.
Very important.
You can't get that man card if you don't follow the manly men rules. And Jesse Waters is apparently the manliest of manly men.
Really the beacon of it.
He
I think
is.
that is the individual we think of when we think of masculinity in America.
It was
right.
Clint Eastwood,
John Wayne?
John Wayne, Mr. Clean, and now Jesse Waters.
Yeah,
Mr. Clean.
absolutely.
With the bald head. He really exudes authority.
Sure.
I like it.
That's after 11:30, but lots of other things to cover that have been going on in Wisconsin.
It's been a discombobulating week, Jane.
No kidding. It's
right.
going to be 4 years
A
of this.
discombobulating week.
Where would you
My goodness.
Where would you like to start?
Well, we'll get into some of the Trumpy stuff, some of the national stuff, and some of all of that. But let's start with the state of the state, because this is Wisconsin, and we're going to be talking about what's happening in Wisconsin. And the state of the state address is a big deal. It's the 7th time now that Tony Evers has delivered the state of the state address, and I think it was maybe his longest speech. I saw somebody out there
Someone
talking
said
about
it was
it
like
was
1,000.
to an hour.
It was 1,000 words longer than his longest previous.
Oh, we're
speech.
doing word count. Well, if he's
Apparently so.
if he's blowing through the word count stuff, he can also write for the recombobulation area. But
Self-burn.
yes, that's right. But I think it was a pretty compelling speech, I thought, and there was a lot of items there. I think part of this is setting the stage for the year ahead, right? And what are going to be the big issues that we're going to be talking about in state government. His budget address is coming in February, and so this is kind of the prequel to that in a lot of ways, right? And so I thought it was, he put out a bunch of a number of proposals that are going to be in the budget. $300 million for mental health services in schools, I think is a big deal. We always hear from the right after there's a school shooting, we need more money for mental health.
Absolutely.
Let's see it.
And then they
Let's
never
see it.
fund it.
Yep. Another one, proposing $500 million for childcare. This was something that state assembly candidates in swing districts, Republican state assembly candidates in swing districts, were campaigning on. I saw an ad from Bob Donovan, Republican candidate. That's right, Jane. Bob Donovan, Republican candidate in Milwaukee, had campaigned saying he wants to fund childcare. Let's see it. Let's see how that's going to shake out. Are you guys skeptical of those campaign ads? I'm looking at your faces.
Well, Bob
and thinking
Donovan's
that you might be.
But Bob Donovan's just going to be able to say, "Well, I supported it, but the rest of my colleagues didn't."
Yeah.
So then
yeah.
I'm off the hook.
And
I'm off the hook.
I think that's going to be an interesting aspect of these, of this governing under new maps are people who were in close races like Bob Donovan, like a number of other state assembly and Senate representatives. Are they going to come to the center on this? Evers talked about fair maps in his address quite a bit. The first quote that he had really in the whole speech was, "We're beginning a new year with a new legislature elected under new fair maps." So
For now.
we'll see if those are going to, impact the way governing goes in Wisconsin, judging by a number of the comments from Assembly Speaker Robin Voss.
Well, and that's
perhaps not.
I think Republicans moving closer to the center will never happen as long as Robin Voss is in power.
I tend to agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's not even going to come close.
But, there were a number of things that stood out to me, too. And I think, there were some headlines this week talking about, like, Evers took a jab at Trump or blah, 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 whatever. He didn't really talk about Trump really at all in that speech until the very end. So
Yeah.
there, I think it was like the 54-minute mark.
Wow.
In the speech, he talked about immigration.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really interesting moment in the speech. I clipped it and put it on some of my social media this week because I think I have been critical of Democrats in a lot of ways for their, not just their position on immigration, their inability to articulate a position
Yes.
on immigration.
Yes.
And
Yep.
what I see as them so often throughout the 2024 campaign, they saw that they were losing on this issue in the polling and whatever. And instead of, putting up some sort of counter argument, I think they kind of just ceded the ground and wanted to change the subject a
I
lot of
agree.
times, which I was pretty frustrated by.
Yeah.
I thought they really needed to put up something as a real alternative instead of just kind of being, oh, we're the ones who really get things done at the border. And I just don't think that
Or
message really
we're
landed.
not as mean as them at the border.
Yeah,
Like
the
it's-
Republican light type of
Yeah.
messaging. I just don't think that really worked. But I think Democrats are kind of struggling to find a path forward. And I thought it was really interesting. Evers didn't really put a lot of like substantive proposals to this, but it was more of just kind of like the nod to, the importance of immigrants to our state's history and our state's economy, and just like treating people humanely who are trying to come here and be citizens and all of that. So I thought that was a really interesting moment in the speech because, we're seeing these debates happen nationally. Oh, do you move to the center or do you move to do this and that? Is it a messaging thing? And I thought it was really interesting, the response that Evers got, bringing up the history of immigration in the state and
Yeah.
just talking about like we're all here from
Someplace
else, right? And I think that element of the conversation at least has really been missing. So I thought that was a really interesting way to approach this. And I think there's going to be legislation coming from Voss, from others on immigration, on really tightening things up from a law enforcement perspective, and all of that. So I think it's just going to be an interesting debate at the state level as we're kind of like downhill from what's happening now in Washington, D.C.
An estimated 70,000 undocumented immigrants live in Wisconsin. About 47,000 of those are employed. This is according to the Nonpartisan Migration Policy Institute. The top industries that employ undocumented workers in Wisconsin, some 11,000 in manufacturing, some 8,000 in professional scientific management, waste management services, about 5,000 in food service, about 5,000 in construction, and about 5,000 in agriculture.
And from what I understand, if I'm not mistaken, the numbers that I looked at, Wisconsin alone, those individuals contributed somewhere around $220 million in taxes.
Right. They pay sales tax.
Yes.
They pay-
Yeah.
Yep.
And so I think that's, people are talking about that too. So I think it's going to be interesting to see as Democrats kind of struggle to find what their message on this is. I think it's kind of an interesting, place to start here in Wisconsin from some of what Tony Evers was saying.
Going back to the governor's State of the State speech on Tuesday night, afterwards, Greg and I talked about it a little bit. It seems to me that sometimes the amounts that the governor asks for is a huge reach.
Yeah.
And Greg said, but that gives him a position to negotiate.
Right.
Do you see it that way? Because when I hear $500 million, I can see Robin Voss going, "Pfft, that's never going to happen."
Kick rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Kick
right.
rocks, yeah.
It is interesting. And I think that was part of the discussion around the proposals from the state superintendent for their office's budget as well. So I think it's, budgets are policy documents, right? And so I think part of it is just an aspirational, like, what would we like to do?
Yeah.
Best
In a
case
perfect
scenario,
world.
perfect world and all that. But I think, the childcare number, just as one example, $500 million for childcare wouldn't be all that different. I mean, it's a higher number than what childcare was funded at under childcare counts, which the Wisconsin Policy Forum recognized as like a terrifically run and well-meaning program that Republicans decided, we're just not going to fund this.
Yeah, we don't like that
at all. And so I think that is, as that kind of became a campaign issue in a lot of these, down ballot type of races last year, I think it's going to be interesting to see how that comes out. But yeah, it's a lot of, and you always hear this in the Republican response. It's just, it's the liberal wish list of all of these things that they want to do, like feed kids and provide childcare and extend Medicaid for new moms and things like
selfish, Dan. They're
that. I
just
know.
So
Just the
selfish.
far left wish list of feeding kids.
Well, the Republicans granted more money than in a generation to education, which doesn't mean that they weren't starving the educational system to begin with, and just gave them some money. So Robin Voss deserves some credit.
Dan Shafer is here from the Recombobulation area. He is also Civic Media's political editor. In about the 2 minutes we have before we go to break, Tom Tiffany has some thoughts about birthright citizenship.
He does. This is really one of the. I did a video about this at for Civic Media this week. The Recombobulation Area Minute, which you hear on the airwaves.
Yes, you do.
A number of times here. I think this is one of the big things that I think is a major problem. Is the Trump attack on birthright citizenship and making it so that if you are born in America, you're not an American. Basically.
It's in the Constitution.
And Tom Tiffany is putting himself at the center of this effort from a congressional level. So there was executive action on this, and then a number of congressional Republicans are introducing something there too. And Tom Tiffany putting himself right at the center of it.
Yeah. Which he never usually does. He's a very quiet man, sits in the back, doesn't really say much.
Until he slips something in.
Yeah.
He's been getting more and more vocal. There's been some chatter about him potentially wanting to make a run for statewide office, perhaps for governor in 2026.
Yeah,
I've heard a little bit about that. It's going to be, but I think, this is a distinct Wisconsin connection to a top line headline issue that is happening in the Trump administration in Washington, D.C. This effort to bulldoze the Constitution and end birthright citizenship.
Did you see the judge's response to the Trump administration?
The Reagan appointee judge in Washington State? Yes, I did.
Who essentially said, you people are Looney Tunes. It's nuts.
What it is.
It's nuts.
It is blatantly unconstitutional, and it's despicable, and I think fundamentally anti-American.
Yeah.
When it really comes down to it. I think, this is a nation of immigrants, and we have built this country, people from all over the world coming here and trying to make a life and find the American dream. I think this action is fundamentally anti-American.
We're going to continue our conversation and keep recombobulating with Dan Shafer. Don't go away. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the vast Civic Media Radio Network.
discombobulated. It's grounds to be frustrated. I could be so elated.
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, the Calvinator on the board, coming to you from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Call or text at 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. We will wrap up the show around 11:51 with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Today it is the That Bites edition. Right now, though, we are recombobulating with Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation area, also Civic Media's political editor. And before you joined us, Dan, we did talk a little bit about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race, April 1st. Make your plans now to cast your ballot. Very, very critically important election if we don't want to go backwards. And all of a sudden, we have no problems, apparently, with big outside money coming in to fund one particular race. But we cared about it before. And now that it's Elon Musk, apparently it's all good.
We've got Elon Musk weighing in
Musk
on
bucks.
the Wisconsin Supreme Court race yesterday on the platform that he owns. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out. But I think this is going to, the fact that he is weighing in on this at all, I think just goes to show how important this race is going to be on a national stage. I think this is going to be one of the first big tests at the state level for the reaction to the Trump 2.0, this Trump second term, and all of this. And he, of course, went out there and made these accusations in a way, or he made some accusations of voter fraud, which, of course, Republicans over and over and over again are going to make these accusations of voter fraud about 2020.
Even though there's no proof.
Elon Gableman was making these accusations of voter fraud in his comments. And I think it is also, the way talking about voter fraud in this context is a good reminder of what happened in 2020 with the conservative majority, the then conservative majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. No court in the country came closer to overturning the 2020 election results than the conservative majority on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. It took that conservative Justice Brian Hagedorn siding with the liberal justices to end that. It was a 4-3 vote.
They were going to do it.
3 conservative justices voted to, overturn the election. We would have, if Hagedorn had sided with the conservatives, as he usually does, we would have been in a genuine constitutional crisis.
Absolutely.
At that moment. And we have Brad Schimmel, who's been siding with January 6th rioters in some of the comments that he's been making. So if you want your vote to count going forward in the state of Wisconsin, it's going to be really important to show up and vote on April 1st and be aware of the connections that are here in this particular race. And I think the right is going to put this front and center and say, if we get the Trump coalition to come out on April 1st, we can win this race. And I think it is going to be, is important to have certain checks and balances in place. It is important, that the work that the liberal majority on this court has done in the last couple of years since that shift took place with the Janet Protasewicz election. But, this type of spotlight, I think, is going to be really important as we go forward. And it is important for just like basics of democracy, right? Basics of, does your vote count?
Well,
And I think, people are going to have a lot of different concerns about like what the Trump administration is going to mean for voting rights going forward. Well, here's your first big test of it. And it's pretty clear. Brad Schimmel siding with January 6th insurrectionists.
They weren't treated fairly.
Saying they weren't treated fairly. Now we have these pardons of people who attacked members of law enforcement, even as Schimmel is touting, putting members of law enforcement in his campaign ads, things like that.
all with completely pristine backgrounds, might I add. Just completely pristine.
I would encourage you to look that one up, see if anybody is what was it, accused of sexual harassment, I believe.
Yeah.
That he put in those ads. Yeah, so I think if you're upset about Elon Musk this week, let's channel that energy into the Wisconsin Supreme Court race.
Well, and I think again it's important to point out the hypocrisy of the Republicans who were all against Mark Zuckerberg providing money to help municipalities run their elections. That's what those what that money was for. This was grant money that Mark Zuckerberg provided for municipalities to maybe hire more workers and print out more ballots. Now we got the Musk bucks coming in. I want to hear the exact same outcry and freak out from the Republicans about what we don't need his money here. He doesn't live here. He shouldn't have any say in what goes on in Wisconsin politics.
If I may be so clear, though, the defense would be Mark Zuckerberg was putting his money into how our elections are being run versus this is just Elon Musk dumping millions of dollars into elections where they Republicans have no problem with. They've never had a problem
With buying an election.
Yes, they have zero problem with that. As long as those
With money
Musk
in
bucks,
politics generally.
yeah, as long as those Musk bucks don't make their way into municipalities to make the elections
Voting
easier to run.
Yeah,
So
well, God, we
that's
don't
where they
want
draw
that.
the line.
Yeah.
That's where they draw the line.
And it was always so funny to me that people think of Mark Zuckerberg as some sort of like big time woke lib.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Give me a break. This guy has always been, pretty conservative leaning and I just like going wherever the wind blows to try to like, curry favor and public opinion and all of that. And like, he was front row for the, Trump, Trump inauguration, and to think that he was somehow trying to pull the strings to like get Trump not elected, like give me a
Well,
break.
I think the one thing that all these billionaire bros have in common is their overwhelming self-interest.
Yes.
That is what binds them all together.
Yes.
It's about me and my company and how much money I can make. That is where their self-interest is, not for the good of the country and certainly not for the good of the American people.
And the recognition that Trump is a very transactional.
What have you done for me
This
lately?
is the kind way of saying he's corrupt. Saying he's very transactional. And so coming and, dumping $1 million into the, inauguration fund, whatever it might be, I'm sure it has nothing to do with any of the legal battles that Mark Zuckerberg and the Meta company and all of that are embroiled in.
That would be wrong.
No,
That would be wrong.
Yeah.
That and the adulation of the Trump neophytes is much more it's quicker and without any conditions. Whereas on the left, they'd be like, well, Mark, I don't know about Mark Zuckerberg. He gave Trump money. They love him. That's it. Unconditional.
Now you're in
He's us. He's
now
with
you're
us.
in the club. News is coming up next. When we return, Dan Shafer will still be here. Manly Men rules for manly men. That's all coming up.
I'll go.
Stay with us. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Radio Network.
I want you to recombobulate me. I need you to recombobulate me. Won't somebody recombobulate me?
Good morning. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jane Matenaer, Greg Bach, resident young person Calvin on the board, coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us. Call, text. The number is the same, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment if you're watching on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. Basketball action tomorrow night. Wisconsin hosting Nebraska. Our broadcast starts at 11 a.m. You can catch the game on WLAK in Amory.
Amory.
Thank you. WFHR in Wisconsin Rapids, WRJN here in Racine, and also WRCE in Richland Center, Wisconsin, hosting Nebraska tomorrow night in men's basketball. Our broadcast starts at 11 a.m. Dan Shafer from the Recombobulation area, also Civic Media's political editor, joins us every Friday at this time to recombobulate many, many different things. And there was the big story earlier this week and still getting some fallout. She's made national news now.
She's made national
yeah.
news.
It's made national news. Meteorologist from CBS 58 was fired after Elon made what a lot of people agree looked like a Nazi salute.
Mm-hmm.
And she posted on her personal page about this, dropped in quite a few profanities, a lot of F-bombs,
Sure.
and they fired her.
They did.
Yeah.
And you know,
Her
obviously,
name is Sam Cuffle, by the way.
Sam Cuffle. We're characterizing this as the Cuffle kerfuffle.
I like it.
Yeah,
I do too.
It works.
And I, you know, obviously there's a lot of criticism that needs to go around here. So I think, you know, CBS 58 made a ridiculous decision, firing Sam for this. I think Sam Cuffle's she's a terrific meteorologist. She really engages with people on social media. I think she's just has a really smart approach to these things, and you know, firing her over this is just absolutely ridiculous. You know, there are a number of publications all over the country that are making the very same claim that she did on her personal social media. Now, you know, maybe there's a contract, something like that in there. I'm not aware of anything from poking around a little bit that you know, on this. But it is one very ridiculous, and I think CBS 58 deserves some criticism. The host of the host on WISN who brought this to the attention of the masses, Dan O'Donnell.
Tattletale.
He deserves a lot of criticism of this. Talking, you know, the right is always we're all about free speech. We're against cancel culture. Except, yeah. And it's always so conditional. And it is just like, it's so much of it is just about cheering for their own team, right? It is not actually about free speech as a principle. It is about just like trying to weaponize that to advance your political goals. Like it is just cheering for your team. And I was, you know, going back and forth with one of the folks from the newsroom from that station there on Twitter, and just like, aren't you guys, you know, against cancel culture? Aren't you guys for free speech? And it's just like, you know, well, read the room. I'm just like, well,
What does that mean?
yeah.
The room has a guy doing a Nazi salute in it. She read it perfectly.
Right. So I think that's part of it, you know, that, and people are directing a lot of criticism at CBS 58, and I think calling the newsroom and things like that. And I have to imagine this is putting a lot of people who had no role in the decision, in an
without a
impossible
doubt.
situation,
Without a doubt.
of just having to, you know, respond to this and whatever else. There's a lot of good reporters and people over there, and so I think that is a piece of this too.
If you want to call and complain, call management.
Yeah.
And direct your calls to management, not the reporters in the newsroom. As you said, Dan, they had nothing to say about this.
Right.
They had nothing to say about this.
And I'll share a tiny bit of news that I was able to learn this week. A source from the CBS 58 newsroom told me the entire newsroom was disgusted when this happened.
Yeah.
That they fired her?
That they fired her.
Now-
That this went down the way it did.
What I'm about to say is not defending CBS 58, and I'm just trying to look at it from a couple of ways, because we all work in media, and
Right.
even though
Right.
we have private social media, or personal social media, I should say, we also know that we are reflections of the company we work for. There's two things about this that make me go, I see why they did it. One, the cursing gave them leverage to do that. If it would have just been, if there had been no cursing, I think it would have been a little bit less. But also, and this is no dig at Sam at all, I don't know her, but because she's not a person who brings in big bucks advertising wise, I think it was an easy cut for them, because they're like, well, we have other meteorologists and she's not making millions of dollars a year for us. I see what CBS 58 thought was the good plan. I disagree with it, But
Yeah.
when I saw the story, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. They would do that because they're gonna to not do anything. The backlash at them, led by I don't want to say his name, Tattletale. It would just become so much for them that it was either they were either gonna fire her on Wednesday or they're gonna fire her this coming Monday.
And I think you make a very good point. Tragically,
Yeah,
I have worked with people whose behavior within the building was abhorrent.
yeah.
Absolutely abhorrent. And because the ratings were good, they left him alone. So I know that happens without a doubt. So she was not enough of a revenue generator
Right.
for them to forgive her or give her a week off, like has happened with so many others in the past. Let me just drop a few names, shall we? Mark Belling. Mark Belling got suspended for 5 days for something he said on the air. Jay Weber, most recently, calling Tim Walz's son a blubbering bitch boy.
2 weeks.
Got him a
suspended.
2
He
week
was suspended for
suspension.
2 weeks.
He was back in the air.
And he's back on the air, and everything is just.
And he gave one of those apologies where it was just like, I'm sorry if people were offended.
No, all he said was, I didn't realize the kid was disabled.
Right.
That was his response.
He then did post a longer apology, to which nobody took. They were like, yeah, nice try.
But I also feel, again, just from my own experience in the media industry, if she were a man, she wouldn't have gotten fired. I think they would have suspended her and then they would have brought her back.
That's
All these
can't say I
guys,
disagree
all
with you.
these guys stayed employed. Ted Perry also got in trouble.
Yep.
He was off for a week and
He got-
came back.
And that was for criticizing Trump. That was for criticizing Trump. And Mark Belling, he got suspended for making disparaging comments about Latino Americans. Like, I remember all that stuff. But yeah, when we talk about the tattletale who brought this all to light, I'm like, what about your coworker who got a 2-week suspension for saying disgusting things about a child?
About a teenager.
Yeah. So yeah, it's who I think someone said it on Pat's show. We should scoop her. Pat said it. He goes, we should scoop her up, Civic Media.
Somebody's going to scoop her up.
Oh, for sure.
absolutely.
I'm really interested to see what she says next because she's been quiet.
She has been
since
quiet.
this happened.
I'm sure
I wonder if
dealing
she's
with all
going
the
to do a
fallout.
national media interview or like something like that. I'm interested to see, kind of what she does next. And I wish nothing but the best for her. And shame on CBS for this. And shame on Dan O'Donnell for bringing this up. This is just absolute absurdity to be bringing this. And it's just like, I to get back to like the Elon piece of this too, I feel like kind of he took an intentional approach here. Like, I think there's a lot of people saying that this is, this looks like a Nazi salute. And it's just like, would any of you be comfortable standing up in front of your workplace or your classroom or whatever it might be and doing the same action that he did? I sure wouldn't. But at the same time, I do think he did it in a way that gave a nod to the neo-Nazi base. Which he needs.
Yes.
And he seems to be approving of in a lot of ways, but gave him some plausible deniability so he could bash the media.
You know what his
I think that's what he did. I think this was intentional. I think this was trying to drive a narrative. And like, we have this Wisconsin connection to it at all and with Sam Kuffel and what happened there. But I think this was intentional to try to bash the media.
Yeah.
Well, and his explanation that I saw this morning was that I'm getting all this criticism for offering my heart to people.
Right.
That's how he's
They've been
playing
saying
it
that
now.
for-
Playing us. He's trying to play us.
They've been saying that for days, and that's when like a bunch of groups were like, we're not sure. And now a lot of groups said, now we're pretty sure he's pushing his boundaries because he can, because he will get away with it because he's Elon Musk. And whether he's autistic, that is beyond not an excuse. But also just
seriously. What?
Well,
yeah.
But they're manly men.
Yeah.
And manly men have different rules. And you should all be abiding by manly men rules as determined by Fox's Jesse Waters. I want to get this in.
That's what we call folks.
before we get to the break. It's called a segue.
Segue. All right.
We have a clip from the manliest of manly men, Jesse Waters. Calvin, can you play that clip about the latest rule?
Because grocery prices are ridiculous. She just found out about inflation.
Kamala
The New York
Harris.
Post caught her grocery shopping with Dougie Fresh. What kind of husband goes grocery shopping with his wife?
Yeah.
John from Nutley, New Jersey. Smart men grocery shop with their wife. It's called price control. Touche.
Touche.
Diana from Fremont, California. What kind of man goes grocery shopping with his wife? A good one. Okay, now this is getting a little out of hand here. You don't need to go grocery
Two whole
shopping
tweets.
with your wife. You should be able to exert price control from afar.
Yes, because she should be wearing a shock collar, for heaven's sakes, so you can keep those prices under control so she doesn't shop like crazy.
First of all, Jesse Waters, you never call him Dougie Fresh. He buys fresh produce. That is the first Doug to you.
Manly men don't go grocery shopping with their wives, guys. Jesse said it. I'm sorry. I don't make the rules. He makes the manly men rules.
Dan, you're married?
I am.
I'm married.
And do you guys grocery shop with your wives?
Sometimes I go without her.
Sometimes I go grocery shopping with my wife and kids.
Oh my God, I'm so
I know.
disappointed in both of you.
I know. I went earlier this week with my wife and kids to Aldi.
Oh my God.
I know.
Wisconsin Press Club, can you come collect your awards from this total beta male next to me?
Were people like pointing at you and laughing while you were in Aldi with your wife and kids shopping?
It was a controversial experience.
And
Dan.
there was a man in the corner just going, he's just exerting price control. He's just exerting price control. He's just exerting manly price controls.
Guys, do you grocery shop with your wives? 855-752-4842. I would love to hear from you. I genuinely would. 855-752-4842. Do you go grocery shopping with your wife? And do you use a straw? How humiliating.
People need some context to that, Jane.
Jesse Waters says real men don't use straws.
You just throw the water or the drink
You
right
just
in your
take
face.
the malt and you go smash it in your face.
Yeah.
That's again, I'm just reporting the manly men rules.
Mm-hmm.
I can't make manly men rules.
I'd also like to reiterate the fact that this is like Jesse Waters, who's is CD list for Fox because they couldn't keep Tucker around. Was supposed to be their Jon Stewart like a decade ago and failed. So he failed right to the top of prime time, and now he just gets to make these claims. He makes his manly declarations, I think, like every 3-4 months, and they're always fantastic.
I know, and he'll like chime in on parenting and stuff
Yeah.
like that here and there, and I just like, I think he had one about maybe it was him or maybe Ben Shapiro or something like that. It's just like, oh, I've never done laundry since I've been married, or
That's
something
not a
like
flex.
that. And it's just like, okay, so you're a bad partner and parent, like,
No, you guys, they're manly men.
yeah.
You gotta have.
We need to
Shoot
connect to
for
the
that.
manosphere and the bro
Yes,
podcasts and really
yes.
bring back the masculinity of
Men's
that we-
rights.
that
Men's
women-
rights.
that women
not
all
grocery
adore.
shopping with your family.
I
Right.
actually
We
don't
all-
even like the fact this show is your show, Jane. I really feel like it. Can we get a Joe Matenaer in here, please?
My voice is low enough. Maybe I can just pretend.
You might want to hit that delay button or something. I'm not sure.
I heard something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
Dan Shafer, I highly encourage you to subscribe to the Recombobulation Area Award-winning. He joins us every Friday. Thank you so very much, my friend. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me on a discombobulating week.
No, it's going to be a
Yeah.
discombobulating couple of years.
Yep.
We're going to wrap up the show next with This Shouldn't Be a Thing. Well, that bites edition. You're listening to Matenaer On Air on the Civic Media Manly Man Radio Network. Welcome back to Matenaer On Air. Jim Bob Matenaer, Greg Bach, and Calvy Nader on the board. Coming to you live from our studio here at Radio Park in Racine. Join us, 855-752-4842. Leave a comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, and what used to be Twitter. I just want to come back with a couple of great texts and comments on the live stream. Before we went to the break with Dan Shafer, we were talking about manly men rules for manly men by the manliest of manly men. Jesse Waters from Fox, he says, men don't go grocery shopping with their wives. What's wrong with you? Andrew from Maine, most of our grocery shopping is done by me. Sometimes she comes along, sometimes she's sleeping because she works overnight. Tom from New Berlin, I go grocery shopping with my son-in-law. Carl from Eau Claire, I not only grocery shop with my wife, I even do shopping on my own. Good for you, Carl. Go out there and face the dragon. Steve from Milwaukee, sometimes, but I usually go by myself. It's faster. Texter on WMDX, I used to be a professional chef. I do all the cooking at home. Therefore, I do all the shopping. And I'm also using a straw right now.
I'm surrounded by nothing but Nancy boys in this place. It's disgusting.
I'm so embarrassed for you. And on the live stream, I wanted to share this from Tony. Again, Jesse Waters says men can't use straws. I'm just relaying the manly men rules. I don't make them. Tony says, I don't use a straw. I pick up a coconut and crack it open with my bare hands and drink that. You go, Tony.
Tony Smash!
You show him how to be a manly man. It's 11:53. That means it is time for...
This shouldn't be a thing.
If you ever have a thing you think should not be, send it in to Greg and me at Jane Says, JaneSays, Jane Says at civicmedia.us. This out of the Daily Beast. The author is Lee Kimmons. Headline reads, Gang of swordfish attack and injure 7 swimmers on popular beach. The beachgoers rushed to the hospital with their feet and ankles covered in blood after the incident in southeastern Brazil. A group of swimmers attacked by a gang of angry swordfish. How do we know they were angry?
Maybe they were indifferent.
They were just doing swordfish things.
Yeah.
A gang of angry swordfish on a popular beach in Brazil attacked a group of swimmers, leaving them with horrific injuries. The group rushed out of the water with their ankles and feet covered in blood. Initially, they thought it was a shark or a barracuda. One man whose son, 21-year-old, needed 4 stitches, said nobody could see the fish. Several people were playing ball in the sea, having fun, and then they all came running out saying they had been bitten by some animal. All the victims were rushed to the hospital. They've already been released. Experts say it's common at this time of year for swordfish, which have razor-sharp teeth, to swim close to the coast. The movement of the swimmers may have spooked them and caused them to launch their assault.
Look, first of all, whenever I think of a swordfish, I think of like a fish with a big old like long schnoz that has like a saw-like type of thing, because that's what cartoons sold me on.
Right.
That's not what they look like. Also,
they do have very sharp teeth.
You are sort of in their house. And I understand you should not play and everything, but you also shouldn't be surprised if you get attacked or, I mean, they were defending themselves. They didn't know what you were. Maybe us being in the ocean shouldn't be a thing. Who knows?
Sharks would certainly say that.
Sharks would. Dolphins, they're insane.
Yeah, you have this anti-dolphin. You have a dolphin bias.
No, I don't have it. If anything, I'm disappointed in dolphin because dolphin were always this wonderful sea creature that you could ride.
Flipper.
Yeah, look up dolphin crimes, and you'll see how awful they are. They really are. They're kind of the worst.
There's our segment for next week. Let's pick on this animal.
This is not picking on an animal. This is hard facts from science.
Anyway, I guess the message to take away from this is just be aware of your surroundings at all times and don't tick off swordfish.
Yeah. And
And
also, Tony on the live stream said, I'm 100% right on dolphin.
Wow. We'll have to get on some. Are they cetaceans?
I'm sorry, what?
Whales or cetaceans?
I don't know what that means.
All right, we have to find out what species dolphins are, and then
They're
we'll
mammals.
see. They're mammals. We'll see if we can find a dolphin expert.
I'm a mammal.
We can break down the bad behavior of when dolphins behave badly.
I guarantee I'm going to take a picture of your face when you find out some of the junk they do in the water.
Dolphin crimes.
Dolphin crimes, high crimes and dolphin
Coming to
meaners.
a radio near you. All right, that wraps up today's episode of
This shouldn't be a thing.
What a Crazy Week.
Yeah.
I can't believe it's already Friday, actually, but it is. We have news coming up next. Todd Alba takes over from noon to 2. Maggie Dawn from 2 to 4. Dom Salvia, 4 to 6 p.m. Pete Schwaba, 6 to 8. Check out Native Roots Radio from 8 to 9 p.m. Robert Pilot is the host. We had him on yesterday. If you missed it, and if you missed any of our shows, you can always find them on our website. Go to civicmedia.us and click on shows and click on Matenaer On Air. Thank you, Greg and Calvin and all of our engineers. Without you guys, nothing works. And thank you most of all for calling and texting and for listening. It absolutely means the world. I hope you find some joy over the weekend and you have the chance to share it. Keep it right here on the Civic Media Radio Network. We'll see you Monday.